let's talk a little bit about, one of your points was about like behind your business. Do you feel that that's having a negative impact on your businesses and the businesses in that area? Because, and I know that area quite well as well, in how it's definitely turned over, and it is that whole area is quite vibrant now. Do you feel that it's having a negative impact?
100% negative. And when I first said earlier that I'm a local business, I believe that if somebody new came in there into my location, that they wouldn't do a successful business because of what is the impact behind us. Because I'm there, I'm a destination now because I've been there so long. People know us, so they come there, they know it's, you know, but as a new business in that area would not do, I don't think would do well. Just because, you know, the way it looks. And I hear it all the time. Like when I have, because my business is about, I'd say 80% regular business, local business, and then 20% is my new customers. And when they do come in, it's always like, oh, we didn't know this was back here. Or, oh, wow, this is awesome, all this back here. You know, they call it back here because they come off. And Claude talked about earlier about that left-hand turn. Absolutely. That'd be a great thing because behind me again, they've now blocked off all our entrances to get into that area.
So Claude, maybe could we talk a little bit about in your past experience as well? So what can we do, and what has been done maybe in the past when we have a business area that is being negatively affected by another business area because of the condition that it's in, and how do we gain momentum for change ultimately?
Okay. It's not something that's easily done, obviously. Just to sort of deal with a couple of issues that were mentioned along the way. So that's the flood fringe. That area is it floods because of its geographical location. As long as the river is where it is, it's going to flood. And I know the argument about, you know, a check valve on the storm, but having been involved with excavating Blackburn's Landing, you know, we hit logs 8 feet down. So that water permeates through all of that soil in both directions. So you short of building a dam, you're not going to get rid of the water that migrates into Beer Lake, if you will. So that's the reality. If you kept adding soil to it, over time you'd condense the material under it, and eventually you would squeeze all of the water out of that, so it wouldn't be as permeable for the water to come through. And if it, you know, you would probably, and you made the great point, Dan, you know, you raise that parking lot and it's going to settle. Part of the reason why, technical, but quickly, the sanitary sewer lines that used to go over from the grocery store over to Chaffee, under the beer store, because of the settlement of soils, they lost their fall. They couldn't, it didn't work any longer. So to raise that area enough, you would put soil on, it would settle. You'd put soil on, it would settle. Eventually you can compress that substrata enough that you would actually have something that you could maybe use as a park. But you can't, you probably wouldn't build on it. You would have to drive piles and all of that, very expensive. Just to circle back on the Esso property, I've had a chat with Mayor Aitchison about my experience with Esso. Absolutely, I would move to expropriate that in a heartbeat, because it's my understanding that extinguishes their liability. If somebody expropriates it, I think that breaks the chain, and you could do an indemnification with them for that.
So would you just want to take that and make it a parking lot, or just take it so that you can then look at cleaning up the area?
I've been involved in 2 other gas stations downtown. The one that's right across the street, beside the Tim Hortons, that little parkette used to be a gas station. Terry Clark was mayor back in the day, and the Cassidys owned it, and we made a deal. Norm Goodwin was on council, and he knew them, and we acquired that for the town, and then we acquired the one at the corner of Brendale and Main Street, that was a gas station. I would definitely do this with the third one, and make it a green space.
Yep.
The reason why we planted trees right at that little corner of John Street, was municipal property, and we planted those trees to kind of, with all due respect, the trees look pretty good. What's behind it, maybe not so much. And so I would do the same thing with the Esso property, expropriate it, do the park, and that can work, because there the contamination's ubiquitous through the whole area.
So how do we deal with, and I'm sure a lot of us are thinking this, is that, and maybe the town, we can talk a little bit about it, is that if there's an owner or multiple owners to that site, how do we approach those owners to maybe come together, both in terms of the people living in the community, town councillors, and the private owners, to say, what can we do to make this area better?
Okay. Can I pick up on something, because the discussion we've just had actually was the recommendation of the Ryerson students, right? It recommended expropriation of the Esso site, and they refer to that area, where the flooding area, what we've just talked about, as green infrastructure. So it is more of open space park. Maybe it continues to flood a little bit, but it's directed. You keep building up, as you say. But they really directed us to get the full engineering report to look at what the options are. So I'm going back to your question. And the area that we're talking about is, by and large, one owner. And I think, for the most part. So we clearly can't, we, the municipality, need to make the decision who is going to be responsible for doing what needs to be done in that area. And we'd like to sit down with the owner, for sure. We'd like to sit down with all of the owners. I think that was the thing that came out of the last student presentation, was there was so much interest at council, amongst our staff, and in the public. And we had a few, including Dan, a few of the owners that were represented. They weren't there that night, they were at the public meeting. So I know that from our perspective, we haven't had the follow-up discussion around our table yet, but we have a couple of decisions. And one is, we need, even Councillor Terziano, who is often one to be very concerned about the bottom line, and I respect her for that. She said, we need to get the engineering view, or that perspective, to know what's possible. I love hearing what you talk about, because to me, it says there's something possible, right?
Yeah, sure
There's something possible. So we need to know what the options are around that. So that's one thing we as a council have to figure out, what the next step is for that. The other is very much a process perspective from ongoing partnership with the stakeholders involved, directly involved. And so those are the owners that have a stake, currently have a stake and an interest in it. And so we have to figure out how that's going to move forward, who takes the lead on that. And then the other aspect is, no question, I've talked to our mayor as well, and he is quite keen to follow up with the issue of the recommendation on the expropriation, because that plays a key part.